Ranking title ACs from the Armored Core franchise across every single game. Why? Because I'm bored. So first things first, we got our oh-so original Enfang from the first game, which has made a appearance. Okay, I won't really say make an appearance in every game. It really only appears in 2 and 3, with, I guess, Nightfall being a slight reference to it. Who am I kidding? Outside of the lowdown in the head, this thing barely resembles it. So, so where do we go with this? Well, we're going to look at design, and then we're also going to look at in-game effectiveness. Now, design-wise, it's iconic. You know, it's got the iconic core, it's got the somewhat slightly bulky arms and legs, which end up making it look more kind of like a suit of armor, which kind of works. Of course, that's also compounded by its loadout, where it basically just looks like it's fucking a Zaku from Gundam. It's got a rifle, missiles, grenade cannon, and a laser blade in its left arm, which up until Armored Core 2 technically wasn't visible, so it just looks like a fucking beam appears out of its wrist. In game, it's honestly pretty solid for an AC. You know, you got 1,000 rounds, the second strongest laser blade under the moonlight, fucking the grenade cannon that tears ass. I think the only thing that kind of brings it down is the missiles because they end up launching in like a kind of like a hexagon pattern, so that does diminish its effectiveness, at least at really long ranges. But if we're looking at in-game, then according to Master of Arena, it has the longest FCS range in the series, as well as the biggest generator. So, you know, you've got your distance, you've got your speed, pair that with the, I believe it's the BT001 boosters, and you know, you've got a relatively speedy middleweight with some of the heaviest parts. Granted, until you get that AC1 overweight bonus, you're not going to be able to use this for shit. But all around for what it is, I will put it at A tier. Next up, Weeder from Project Phantasma. Weeder is a weird one, namely because you only have two weapons, that being the XP, no, I think it's I had the WGX 2000, XP 2000, something like that, which is basically just a 200 shot plasma rifle and a unknown laser blade, which I haven't fought this thing in Master of Arena, so I don't know what color the blade is, but if I had to guess, it's going to be the fucking 3000 odd 33. If not, then it'll probably be the Moonlight. Otherwise, it's a weird AC. It doesn't know what it wants to be. It has a lightweight core, but at the same time, it also has heavyweight arms and legs. And because this is not Armored Core 2 and beyond, you don't have an overboost, so you, you're basically wasting EN just to get around, and then you're wasting more EN just to shoot and to use your laser blade. So, like, design-wise, you know, it looks cool. It's got a boxy aesthetic with a kind of like an almost insect-like head with the new radar part that was introduced in Phantasma. But gameplay wise, it's brought down by the fact that you basically don't have an arsenal at all. You are just reliant on that on that laser blade and pulse pulse rifle, and you're kind of just at the mercy of your generator because once you run out of EN, that is it. You are screwed. Like maybe Human Plus would help depending on the laser blade because you get different blade waves, but that can only help so much when it comes to EN loss. So I'm gonna put this in D tier. Next up, the last of the Gen 1 trilogy, Annihilator. You all know his story, you all know what he is. He is a big, strong boy, wielding the mighty Kurosawa, the mighty laser cannon, and depending on the source material, he'll either be using the Moonlight or a blue laser blade. And back when they were actually good, vertical missiles. Pair that with an actual lightweight frame with heavyweight legs, because technically it uses the LN1001B, which is a reinforced modified heavyweight version of the normal LN1001 that the Enfang uses, which is the in-canon explanation as to how it's supposed to carry all those parts. Obviously, in-game, it doesn't actually hold all those parts. You still need overweight, but I digress. I mean, technically you can remove, I believe it was the laser cannon I got rid of in my initial playthrough, and you can still hold on to the rest of the loadout just fine. Aesthetic wise, it's very cool. You got that sleek pointed core, you got the red lights, the antennae, the beloved visor that I honestly didn't find myself using all that often in future games, but I mean, it looks cool here. Like, it's a solid design. Gameplay wise, you've got, well, obviously, you've got some of the strongest weapons in the series, but internally, you've also got basically the best FCS in the Tyrant Quad, which, believe me, it lives up to the name of Tyrant. You've got the GB 1000, or no, not 1000, 10,000, so, you got EN for days, and you have the BVR33 boosters, which make you pretty speedy. So you know what? S tier, because, well, I mean, you can't go wrong with a name like Annihilator. That's just awesome. Okay, next up, the Zeo Matrix standard model from Armored Core 2. This one is a weird case, which I'm also going to have to draw back on my very few memories of AC2 as a whole, but for the most part, I guess it's an alright design. Whereas the Enfang was nice and square-like, this is more rounded out, which I guess does follow the tradition of, you know, brick AC versus sphere AC that most of the game's intros have. So you know what? I guess that's befitting. Otherwise, the design is honestly pretty solid outside of, the core and the head, arms very minimalistic, legs have next to the core have like the most over designed parts I've ever seen, like these little exhausts on the shins. Weapon wise, well, you've got another Kurosawa, another. Honestly, you're just carrying Annihilators set, except replace the laser blade with a shield, and you've got. I can't remember if they're missile extensions or missile interceptors. I believe they're extensions into. Yeah, yeah, I think they're extensions for your split missile, I believe it was. Even though the intro makes you think it's gonna shoot multiple. No, no, it's just a fucking extension. Or in game, it performs all right, I guess. Once again, you need the overweight bonus just to get this thing off the ground, but even then, it's more of a kind of like a backpedal, stay in the back of the class kind of a loadout. Because the Kurosawa and the laser cannon, assuming you aren't repping Human Plus, really drain your EN, especially with the AC2 Kurosawa being very demanding. And plus with the laser, or not laser, the energy shield, that's more EN going down the hole. And so basically it kind of promotes more of a defensive play style. Unless of course you decide to use the limiter release cheat, and then you're allowed to be aggressive. Because, well, that's infinite EN for 30 seconds for, you know, EN weapons. That usually tends to help a lot. Otherwise, I honestly don't really find this design as useful as the Enfang, because, well, once again, still very reliant on post-game buffs to be used. And even when you do kind of trim the fat on it, it still has that slight problem of just it demands way too much energy management. So we'll put you in B tier. And then there's Wonder Raid from Another Age, F tier. Like, just F tier. Okay, at least Weeder has the decency to bring in, like, actually decent weapons that can be used against another player. Wonder Raid looks at build composition and scoffs at it. The only thing you bring to the table with Wonder Raid is a mediocre rifle that takes way too long to unlock into the game, a a fucking lightweight grenade cannon that also takes way too long to unlock, and even then it's just a weaker version of the original grenade cannon because you only get 10 shots with it before the game decides you're shit out of luck. And then, what's that strapped to your left arm? What is that for defense or offense? The starting fucking laser blade. That is your fucking close range saving grace if you don't want to use the rifle for some reason. The fucking starting laser blade. And canonically, Wonder Raid does not use Human Plus because when you fight him at the very end of the game, he has to kneel to use his grenade cannon. So if you don't bring Human Plus into any fight where you unironically use this thing, you're going to be very handicapped unless for some reason you decide to use the overboost trick for kneeling with a grenade cannon, where basically you get into a raid position and then just as you're about to fire, you start an overboost so you can get away before you're utterly pounded. If you don't do that, your chances of surviving any encounter with a decent build are frankly non-existent. Yeah, he's got the quick turn boosters, which make retreat and firing okay, but that's namely just for either tracking people down or if you accidentally outturn them. Like, I've used them on some of my other builds, like some of my AC3 builds, and yeah, they do get a lot of merit later down the line, but with Wonder Raid, it's just eh. So, F tier, yeah, I'm not going to touch on design because, well, who does his design better? If not, the Crest Close Combat type from Armored Core 3. It's basically the Enfang that's got missile interceptors, and this time it's blue, which is also going to be a running theme because let's say you have the Annihilator, you have the CCL standard model, you have Wonder Raid, you have this one, you have the Crust Assault type, and you have Evangel in Last Raven because for some reason that version's blue, even though he was black in Nexus. And then you have Cascade Range, who I think is supposed to be blue in the arena, but he's black in all the game's marketing and the model kits. So I don't know. Point is, uh, blue's going to be a very big running theme from this point onwards. Otherwise, it's basically the exact same as the Anfang, so not really much to say on its kit, other than the fact that it's an overboost core, so that's always fun. And the missiles are kind of an upgrade because instead of them being a hexagonal split, they're just a lock on and then fire a volley, so hmm. Yeah, I'll put it in S tier. Next up, we have the Crust Assault type. F tier. Between it being nothing but heavyweight parts on a lightweight frame with some of the worst legs in the series that cannot hold their own weight. I mean that genuinely the legs that they decide to use for this thing to introduce in Silent Line cannot hold anything. Like you use them, you are actively handicapping yourself. And it's just like you think it's gonna be good, you know, it's got the crow, which every Silent Line and three-player fucking hates. It's got the Kurosawa, which is arguably the strongest it has been in the franchise up until, or I won't really count six because that's kind of dependent on your generator. And it's got back boosters, which the intro lies to you about being able to drop them like an air gun. You can't drop them; they are stuck. And it's even got the shiny new Exceed Orbit Core that's a double fire. Plus, you know, he's rocking the Mist Eye, which is, or actually, everything but the legs on him are basically my favorite parts in the series, so, you know, it's got that going for him design-wise. But in practice, it's just so fucking ass. You you move as slow as molasses, your energy's gone in 30 seconds, if that. And not to mention, the game won't ever stop screaming to you about that low warning until you drop everything but the laser plate. It just, it's not a good AC. It's not a good design. It really makes you wonder what these devs were smoking by not giving 3 an overweight bonus. Like, this is the one game that desperately needs it because, you know, at least with the Crust Assault type, yeah, he's overweight too, but you can drop the shoulder extensions and then the game will stop screaming at you. You basically get the on-fong but within the weight limit. That this thing, you have to drop everything except that dinky little shit sword. So he stays in F tier. Next up, Oracle. Now this one's a tough one. Gameplay wise in Nexus, he's basically like I know you fight Evangel 2 times and he's kind of just a pushover, but believe me, this frame is definitely something once you get the hang of it. You've got the fastest boosters, you've got, I kind of want to say, the worst Moonlight ever, but to compound it, you've got a linear cannon, fucking linear rifle, which is basically a linear cannon but for your hand. You've got micro missiles with extensions, so you've got swarm tactics, and you've got a double EN core, or EO core, so you know you can pepper them with that while you open fire. And from what I remember reading on Reddit, this is technically the best iteration of this core, so yeah. The frame itself is very. Oh yeah, I forgot. He also comes with missile decoys, so that's fun. The frame itself, from a aesthetic viewpoint, well, it's no wonder Oracle became one of the more iconic ACs of the franchise. It's got the ZCL legs, it's fucking, it's got the new shiny head with radar bioscanner. It looks cool. It's got a line, but it's also got cameras on top. And plus, if I know we're looking at the last Raven version, but in Nexus, the blue is black, so it looks better. Also, I think the only thing that really brings it down is just the moonlight, but it's really water on the bridge. The internals, though, leave much to be desired because the Magnolia and Hazel combo paired with the BR83TP just kind of leaves the thing to cook itself alive if you try boosting. So for that, I will give him an A tier. If his internals were better and he wasn't pushing the limit on being overweight, he would probably be higher. Next up, we got Nine Breakers 9 Ball and Formula Front 9 Ball because it's just this one but blue. Basically, it's kind of the exact same thing as Oracle, except you've got the starting laser blade, you've got I guess in this guy's case, a double shot grenade cannon and a triple shot linear rifle, and micro missiles with no extensions. But you've got the solid EO core from Silent Line, so that makes up for offense. You've also got the goal, which is one of the faster boosters, right up there with the A3TP. And plus, it's 9 ball. Although granted, I don't know, I'm not really a big fan of this iteration of 9 ball's head. I don't know, the double blue visor kind of just takes away from like that stealth assassin feel it had from AC1 and Master of Arena. I don't know. The blue just kind of takes away from it being a kind of like a stealth unit. And plus, the micro missiles aren't exactly what I would call a premier weapon choice. Now, if he used the actual dual missile launcher that Generation 3 has, that would technically have kept him more faithful to his original. Uh, Same thing with using an actual like pulse gun instead of this linear rifle, because the rest is spot on. You've got the grenade cannon, the starting laser blade, which the original 9 bolt did have, but and like you've even got the green booster flames. Like the rest of it, this is accurate to the original. It's just these two and the head just kind of like bring it down a few notches. So B tier. For anyone who knows me on Reddit, you know the relationship I have with Cascade Range. You know how much I loathe him, how much I despise him, and how much I hate the fact that his frame is actually decent if you replaced everything but this laser blade. And for anyone on YouTube, just know I have a very complicated hate tolerate relationship. I don't know, it's like Timmy's dad with Dinkelberg. C tier. Okay, now we get to look at the two decent ones before we stagnate back into uselessness. So, next up, Supplice from Armored Core 4. Supplice being the poster boy and being a Raelian art model is easily one of the best nexts that Gen 4 has to offer. From its stats, it's fairly tanky in the PA ratification department. You've got the Marv and the ANR, which make for a fun combination. You've got the hard hitting but slow firing rifle, and you've got the fast firing rifle with not as much damage, but that's still damage. Then you've got the Ogodo on the back, so that's nice, lovely raw burst damage that kind of plays into the whole use these to strip them of PA and then let them have it. And you've got the 051 Anam for if they have missiles, then you can just deploy flares. Yes, I know they look like fucking like a spread missile launcher in the intro of 4. Dude, that is a lie. It They are not missiles. Then you've got the internals, which uses a relatively decent output generator, and I believe it was a decently ranged FCS for the model. All in all, it works for what it tries to do. You know, it's a mid to close range duelist, and because dual rifles is also really fucking strong in 4, I'm going to put him in S tier. I don't even have to talk about the Alia, that's just how peak it is. White Glint basically looks at everything Supplice does and just says, I can do that too. Replace the Ogodo and Anam with the Saline rocket launchers, and replace the Marv with the, I forget the name of the left-hand rifle that White Glint uses, but basically it's the same thing except it has a shitload more ammo. And when you look at White Glint's fine-tuning, you realize the reason he's such a tank is because he maxed out primal armor resistances, so basically his whole thing is that he's just going to stand there and gun you down while you basically scratch him. And plus, you know, he's got assault armor, so like the Nepo baby he is, he can just blow up whenever, and well, congratulations, now he has no PA, you have no PA, and it's just a matter of who can slug it out first. Design-wise, it's basically just the Armored Core 2. It's basically just the ZCL from AC2, but white, which honestly, I've never really been a fan of this design because, I don't know, compared to the rest of the Generation 4 lineup, which already sticks out like a sore thumb because it focuses more on organic looking ACs rather than, you know, mechanical mechs. I don't know, this just doesn't, this really looks out of place in a game that already looks out of place compared to the rest. I don't know, it's too Gundam-y for my tastes, which is ironic considering the guy who developed this was also behind this, so I'll put him in B tier. Now Armored Core 5, the Dark Raven, and oh boy. You know, you'd think this is going to be a promising build. You've got the Moonlight, you've got a laser rifle, battle rifle, kinetic rifle, but you've got such a shitty frame. Now, for anyone who hasn't played Armored Core 5 and doesn't want to, the game operates off of a rock, paper, scissors system, which really hurts it. Because basically everybody in the game is weak to one specific damage type, maybe two if you're lucky. But beyond that, unless you bring the appropriate damage type, then you're not going to do shit. So the game incentivizes by having a double hanger system, so you don't actually have back weapons, you just have four primaries. And so it encourages, you know, bring the correct weapon, use for the correct engagement. The main issue, though, is that the frame, not the weapons are fine because they cover all the bases. The issue is the frame because it's more geared towards kinetic energy resistances, so basically bullets, which is a very big issue when in 5 there is hardly anybody who uses bullet weapons. The first half of the game alone is like nothing but explosives, which really brings it down. On top of that, this frame is not easily accessible in the fucking slightest because you have to get to team level 50, which literally unlocks everything in store. So by then you have probably beaten the game and all the order missions. So assuming you don't waste time grinding like a specific order mission or just farming the intro mission over and over again, you are never going to see this thing until the very end of the fucking game. And I mean this, like, when my older laptop still worked and I was playing this game to get footage as the Dark Raven, I spent maybe a good 2 days grinding out to like 80 order missions and grinding the first level out just to barely hit level 45, which is enough to make the first iteration, which is basically just a weaker frame. This thing requires devotion to finish. And so I can't really give this thing a good rating because I've only ever used the first iteration, which has weaker parts, I guess. But I don't know, even in 5, it's just not a viable build because anyone can just use basically double thermal or double concussives and just utterly rock your shit from a decent range. Because as long as they bring thermal defense, that's half your arsenal useless because the Moonlight and the laser rifle both do thermal. So if they come with resistances to your heavy hitters, you are worthless. D tier. Next up, we've got the one AC I never used because I never made to Verdict Day, the CO3 Malicious. So from what I've read on the wiki, you come with a sniper cannon for an arm and a Gatling gun with a kinetic shield. Basically, it suffers the exact same problem as the Dark Raven in that you're really only resistant to one damage type and you can only use one damage type. So you're basically scissors going up against rock. It's not really going to work out in the slightest. And considering the fact that you have even less of an arsenal in a game that expects you to have 4 weapons and you're only bringing 2, that's that doesn't exactly scream out you're going to have a fun time here, Jimbo. Like I'll give the frame this much. It's a cool design, even if the bulky core and legs really don't do the head or super skinny vampire arms any favors. But, I guess that's fine. It's aesthetic in a sense. But, like, otherwise, this thing is really not gonna do you any favors in Verdict Day at all. Because unless you come across a KE, someone who's weak to KE, you're not going to do any damage, and you may as well just be shooting them with a water gun. So for that, easy F tier. And finally, we have Nightfall, poster boy of Armored Core 6. And this one is different. Now, the loadout in the trailer, and when you first find his corpse, shows him using a Ludlow in place of the Songbirds. So, that adds some like rapid fire viability, which I guess some of the more elitist players would be preferable since from nerf the Songbirds in 6. So I guess if you don't want to use those, then you can use the Ludlow and that'll be fine. My main issue with Nightfall is that its build kind of contradicts itself because you're expected to use the Songbirds to get ACS strain into a pile bunker, but the issue is the second Songbird blast is usually enough to push your expected target out of pile bunking range. And oh boy, that can hurt. The Scudder and the missiles, they work fine for what they do. You know, you've got your pincer missiles, so you can force EN usage, and then you've got your consistent rifle for damage. That's fine. And if you really want to go the cheap way out, then you can just use assault armor, just get staggered there, which is what Nightfall does in his fight, so I guess that would be more accurate piloting. And I say this as basically the Nightfall expert because I beat the game using the frame, and yeah. But my main issue comes with the fact that this thing is just the starting frame, which isn't exactly the greatest in 6. Like, you can see it with its pile bunker performance. Like, I think fucking Raven's pile bunker, when you fight him, is artificially empowered because, believe me, that thing can barely do slightly above 60% of an AC's health, even with stagger, and depending on what uh, they aren't really resistant to. Because the starting frame like does not do that much melee damage. It's only 100, which is meant to like serve as a baseline. And then the rest of the frame also doesn't really equate to its performance either. Because basically the idea is that it's a pump and dump setup. You've got the generator with arguably some of the, actually I'm looking at it right now. So you've got a generator with the lowest capacity in the game, and I mean that is lower than the starting generator, but you have maxed out recharge and supply recovery, so that balances out, you know, dump everything, get it all back. And you've got it with the starting boosters for assault boost dancing, but it's not at all complemented by the core, which just has middle of the road output, efficiency, and supply. And then, well, this frame basically teeters on the edge of being completely unusable because, well, you try to put anything else on this thing and you're going to get that lovely overburdened or EN shortfall sound effects. Ironically enough, if you were to swap this thing out with a full meat lander, you would actually get a much better frame. But yeah, besides the point, if we're going to look at aesthetics, I mean, it makes sense why it's the poster boy. You know, it's very rounded out, and I guess it made for good theory bait that this could technically be C4617 from the trailer because, you know, it's the exact same frame. But at the same time, though, it only really gets carried by the custom head part because outside of that being basically the only thing people remember from this thing and the pile bunker, this thing is very fucking unmemorable. Like I hate to say it, but this thing does not really look all that great. But I mean, that's just my personal opinion. We're all entitled to those. So, you know what? I'm gonna put him in C tier. Because I also kind of have like a tolerate, and I can't tell if I despise or love the frame, but yeah. Well, that's been my very biased and definitely not fuzzy memory dependent tier list. Uh, oh my god, I wasted over 40 minutes talking about this. Well then. This is probably gonna piss people off.